Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Eve Prosper Market Show. I'm your host, Lockefox, and I know we were off last week, but we have quite a show for you this week. With Mosaic just launching, there's a lot of news to go through. But before we get to that, let's talk about some quick show information. Just to start, I want to thank everyone who has been subscribing. We've got a ton of new subscribers on YouTube. I want to thank EveNews24 for featuring us last week. That was a huge bump in our numbers. We're not quite to 1,000, but we will be soon, which means I should probably think of a giveaway or something. If you want to follow the show, just remember Eve Prosper, where that'll get you everywhere. That'll get you YouTube and Twitch and Patreon. If you guys support what we do, we do really appreciate Patreon subscribers. They do help keep the lights on over here. We have no new patrons to thank this week, but thought I'd at least plug it. And last but not least, remember to tune in to the Tweetfleet Slack if you want to talk with us off the air. We have a Prosper channel there, which is reasonably active, and the guys on Slack are pretty awesome. So I'm going to keep that relatively brief, and we'll go straight into the news because we have a lot of news to cover. Let's start the top of the show with new Aurum deals. Now, I did not get a chance to really dig into the Aurum prices. There were a bunch of threads on the Eve Reddit talking about whether this is a better deal or a worse deal and how we feel about that. My chief concern continues to be that in the Winter Summit, we heard that CCP wants to transition completely to Aurum, so that you could buy Plex with Aurum or do all of your real money services in Aurum. And my only thing against this is that I worry about being able to keep that stream going forward for people who want to buy in. I think as we go forward in time, more games are going to come back to that. You can either give us a bunch of time or you can give us some extra money. And I do like the one-way flow of dollars to ISK that Plex gives us. And I worry that since you can't redeem Aurum, you'd have to go redeem it into new products like the clothes or the skins or any other number of services, that it gets really squishy trying to figure out, I just want to go and go PvPing. I need some amount of ISK to just do it. I don't care about grinding. I'm a little worried about the Aurum there, but we'll see what happens in the upcoming months. So just keep an eye on this. I think it transitioned with Mosaic, so there was a talk about the deals were better before than they are now. So if you missed the boat, I'm sorry. Next, Mosaic has released, like I said a few times, and there are a bunch of features in this one. I know we've been clamoring for a meteor expansion in the last few months, and Mosaic sure has a lot of features in it. So the new ore yields are live. The NPE opportunities have been expanded. If you want to hear more about that, go check out CCP Rise's chat at FanFest. He did a whole panel on it. The 3D star map is out of beta, except that explorers are not particularly happy with it. It seems to be a real pain to do probing with it. Two-factor authentication has finally been released. Hallelujah. I know a lot of people out there have been clamoring for two-factor authentication. CCP has handed out dongles before, but this is the first time we actually get to see two-factor authentication. I haven't messed with it yet, but I'll probably go deal with it this weekend if I can get some time to go do it. New burner missions have been released, and I've been hearing a lot of good things from my mission running friends that the burner missions are pretty awesome, so go check those out. The T3 destroyer rebalances that we heard about in the last 07 show have gone live. I haven't had my ear to the ground on those. All I've been following is the price adjustment up, which should already have been completed. So they're going to be a little more expensive and a little less awesome, is basically the long and short of it. There was a Corp UI overhaul that was just rolled back a couple of days ago. So the alert, if you haven't seen it yet, if you're a CEO, CCP sent out a mass email to, your real email box talking about a take rights bug, that people who had been given view rights may have been accidentally also given take rights to hangars. So please go audit your stuff and get in touch with CCP if anything is out of order. I don't know when the UI is going to be re-released. I don't know if that's going to be a hot fix or if that's going to get pushed to the next release, but we'll see what happens. And the next big thing is the Entosis BPOs should be out on the market, so all of you industrial speculators should probably get to working. They don't have a ton of use yet, but according to Diana Olympos in the Prosper Slack channel, they can be used to gather intel off of Jove observatories, so that's kind of a neat little lore snippet to go along with the wind up to get these things out in the hands of players. And last is the skins have been released, which I have to say are extremely sexy, but the pricing seems a little bearish, I guess is the word to say. I'm not exactly sure. The pricing seems high, and I'm a little bit worried about the current the way they've set up the whole shop. There, a lot of the CCP people are rather boldly saying that they're trying an aggressive pricing stance, and that they may change it in the upcoming months, hoping that by pricing it high and bringing it back, that's an okay thing to do. But I get a little bit worried about frigate skins that are $20, and I think the super capital skins are a little bit cheap for what they are, considering the full cost of a hull. So I have a blog in the chamber to go release. I just need to finish writing the little bits and bobs. I'd like to see the scales better adjusted. So you talk about like a frigate skin runs from 50 cents to $2, and a cruiser skin goes up to $5, and a battleship skin, well, that one would be 15, maybe 20 for a special one. And talk about shrinking the entire value, the total value, to buy them all, so that people would instead be willing to buy copies. So your conversion rates might be slightly higher because people are buying 3 copies of a skin so they can use it on all of their characters. But I'm not CCP, so I can't really tell them what to do. So I think skins are a little overpriced. There's a couple I've had my eye on. I kind of want some of the freighter ones because space trucking is boring and I kind of want a little bling. A lot of them are very pretty, but the pricing just continues to put my teeth on edge. With that, let's move on to Plex, which have been on a big rise in a big way in the last few weeks. I know that we had talked the last time we were on the air about coming out of the 800 level and climbing up above 810, and how that looked like just some normal washing going on, where the price of 800 was no longer sustainable. Buy orders got bought out. Everything slid up slightly. It looked relatively normal. But in the last few weeks, especially on the rise up into skins getting released, we've seen a pretty steep rise in Plex prices. Not high enough to trigger any of our flagging yet, but we're up at about 850 at the moment. I know that the last graph looks really steep and really big, but let's look at the entire year and get a little bit of perspective. We're seeing if we go and we compare it to last year, we're seeing the early summer rise. This looks a lot the same as what we saw at the middle of May going into June. We're seeing something similar. There's just been a 10% Plex sale announced today, so that'll take a little bit of the wind out of the sails. I think 850 is a reasonably stable price. I have a hard time committing to it climbing much higher, but as we head into the FuzzySoft patch, we may continue to see pressure upwards to get us near 900, which would be very interesting to see us climb that high this fast. If we look at the buy and the sell orders, we've been seeing that a lot of the deltas have been very thin on the way up. We're still seeing a pretty strong margin at the moment, which should collapse. I believe that this 860 price, is really the place to be for the time being. And then I know that there have been some requests. I know that DeLone Wolf has started incorporating the other RMT tokens into his analysis, so I thought I'd go ahead and jump on that bandwagon. Here is a graph of the RMT tokens that are easily normalized. So that is Plex licenses is the pink line, and then the green bar is multiple pilot training certificates, and this blue bar is the pilot body resculpt certificate. And these have been normalized to the price of Plex. So we're seeing that the resculpt certificates are much cheaper than the Aurum that they would cost to buy, and we're seeing that multiple pilot training certificates, their buy orders are significantly better than Plex, and much more stable than the price of Plex. But the sell orders track the price of Plex pretty strongly, so I thought that was pretty interesting. If we throw in the Aurum tokens, we see that the actual tokens are way overvalued. This little skinny green line is 30-day Plex, but the tokens are, if you normalize them, are a terrible deal. You'd be much better off buying a Plex, cashing it out for Aurum, and just using the Aurum up than buying out tokens to try to fix the little bit you're short on. Now, again, I would like to see tokens you'd be able to spawn tokens the same way, using the same mechanics that they spawn. What are they? They spawn the money tokens for nullsec ratters. I would like to see a system like that where I could get some tokens out, maybe have to pay a conversion rate to get them out. I don't really care, but this price is just ridiculous. If we remove the 100 Aurum token, things look a little bit more normal, but we're still seeing almost a 2x price for Aurum if you're buying tokens than if you are buying Plex. So that's just weird. And the 100 Aurum tokens might just be a factor of they're not spawned readily, so I've never cashed out for Aurum tokens, so I'd have to go and buy some and figure that out. But still, tokens are a much higher deal than the Plex that they're made from. And if you're in a speculating market, I would be trading in these more than Plex, because they seem to be a lot more volatile. The swings are a lot wider as well. So let's move on to minerals, now that I've spent about 5 minutes longer than I usually do on the news and Plex. Tritanium continues to slide. I really thought that at 5.5 we'd see the floor of this thing. At 5.6 we'd see the floor of this thing, and it just keeps falling. We're way into oversold territory, and this is extremely weak for Tritanium. So all of the gains that I was expecting to see in the T1 market, basically to rebalance, the price of Tritanium has fallen rather than the final price of the finished goods. So that's rather interesting, and I need to go and figure out the miner's minimum wage calculations so we can talk about what a high-sec miner would actually, what this would do to a high-sec miner, what you're seeing at the final end, and how bad your ISK per hour is becoming. But Tritanium is cheap, man, and it could keep sliding, so keep an eye out there. If you look at Pyrite, we've stayed relatively stable around 12.4. There's no significant action here. It could still slide like Tritanium. Not really sure which way it'll go, but we will end up having to see. We're still in relatively stable territory, so we could slide all the way to 12.2, and that would be considered normal. So just keep an eye out on that one. Mexilon is another one that just won't stop sliding, and this, I would believe, is the canary in the coal mine for nullsec capital builders are just throwing in the towel. Without a great plan for capital usage in FozzieSov, there's not a great need to keep those shipyards running. And Mexilon has been the choke point. Now, it could also be that with the new ore yields and Mexilon no longer being a choke point, that nullsec is supplying themselves and their demand is no longer coming to JITA, causing the overall demand to slump. But we've seen the units traded is still relatively the same pre and post the drops. So this looks a lot like stockpiles getting sold off at the moment. Moving on to Isogen, not a lot to report. We're at about 120 as a stable price. Looks like we've got a signal to climb slightly, but I wouldn't see us getting all the way up to 125. We should be relatively stable in the upcoming week. Noxium has continued to slide, but it's in a rather stable slide, if that makes any sense. I would expect over the weekend to drop around 600. We might see it go down to 590 and then climb back up to 600 and then fall down to 570 and climb back up to 580, kind of doing this stair step downwards. I expect this trend to continue. Zydrine, I'm feeling super smug about. On the last show 2 weeks ago, I had said, sell while the getting's good. You're not going to get a better price than today, and don't get greedy. And what happened? We came right back into a stable point at 1200 from a peak at about 1500. So this was again a case of the climb is unstable and there's no knowing where the top is. So in these cases, it's a great idea to keep your trades fast and small, allowing yourself to sell on the way up. The idea that you can sell at the peak, buy at the trough and sell at the peak is just a dream without being able to look at it in the past. There's no great way to say what the actual peak is. So if you listen to my advice, then congratulations, enjoy your ISK. And we saw a similar pattern in Megasite, where the weekend after the last show, we saw a pop and we're down at 2,000. And I would believe that 2,000 is a decent steady state. Now, as we go into the summer, I would believe that there will be slight downward pressure from this 2,000 level. We should still be seeing a glut of supply from nullsec and 0.0, but it shouldn't be at such a point where the markets can't absorb it. So I expect us to slide very slowly down from 2000, but it'll be a long, slow slide. And then Morphite, the one that I always get wrong, has been tracking upwards rather significantly. Volume is up and prices are up. Now, I don't know if this is a speculation. A lot of this looks like the exact numbers here look a little fishy, but the prices are up, and this gives me a little bit of hope that we will see a little more Tech 2 activity, which should bring moon materials out of the pits they've been in. I haven't seen it this week. Most moon materials have been diving down in the last week, but hopefully this is the sign of a rising tide. And then if we look at the actual spreads for minerals, we're not seeing anything really out of the ordinary. We're seeing, we see the tritanium that as soon as Fozzie's presentation on the 07 show happened, we saw it sliding, but it's coming down into a rather stable trough. And same with Mexilon, doing the same pattern. That as soon as Fozzie talked, the markets had decided where they're going. So, and hint, hint, nudge, 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 nudge. We might be seeing this tomorrow on the 07 show, so keep tuned there. Moving on to fuel. Just a quick look. The fuel isotopes remain relatively stable. We're seeing, again, Amar isotopes have been more popular in the last couple of weeks. This may be because of added tactical use. The higher desire for Amar towers might be driving this. It's interesting to see Amar fuel over Galente fuel at the moment, so this might be a signal that a lot of moon miners are out of the game at the moment. And we continue to see weakness in the Minmatar fuel, but that's to be expected. If we look at blocks, we're seeing that the high price has been driving the price of fuel blocks up, but it has come back down again. I would expect the price of fuel to climb over the weekend for Amar, and the price of Galente to fall over the weekend, just because it seems like the prices are opposite what they were in isotopes. Moving on, let's talk about some outliers. First, the 1000 Aurum token tripped a bunch of our flags because they are getting traded in much higher volumes than they were before, and they are trading much higher than they had before. So this is to be expected. I would expect as we move towards more Aurum being directly bought from the secure site, that we see the price of tokens and the price of Plex reach a parity point, but I don't know when that will exactly be. I think that we'll need to see a lot more skins, and we won't see that parity hit until the midsummer. Moving on to moon materials, we're looking at cadmium at the moment, and it is falling like a stone. This will probably get reflected into things like phenolic composites. So again, my little stash is going to continue falling in value, and I'm going to continue crying into my beer. And this is a similar trend. Like, everything in the moon markets is flat or falling slightly. Everything in the advanced material markets is doing the exact same thing until we see a lot more Tech 2 demand to slurp up the supply. We're going to continue to see weakness here. Another one that has been turning around, enriched uranium in the P2 markets, has been rising. We saw it hit a trough along with electronic parts, but it has recently started climbing. At the moment, it could go either way. We could continue climbing, or we could fall back down to 9,600. So it could go either way. And then construction blocks have been falling, and they continue to fall. It looks like we're getting close to the floor here, so if you want to speculate, now is about the time to start buying in. Again, construction blocks are going to be a canary along with Tech 2 ships. If we're not seeing more Tech 2 ship consumption, we won't be seeing more construction block consumption. So keep an eye on that. Those are the deals you want to worry about. Moving on to ships, we continue to see the bowhead climb in value. Now, I had expected that once we reached this trough a month ago, that we would see the price stay relatively flat. When it comes to capital ships, the prices are pretty slim. The margins just aren't very good, and they track mineral prices rather strongly. And with the Zydrine and Megasite, yeah, I expect the prices to go up, but as Tritanium falls, I expect the price of bowheads to fall. So at the moment, I think these are pretty grossly overvalued. We'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. I could be incredibly wrong, and it could continue to climb, but right now we're at almost 1.8 billion, and that just seems way too high. So keep an eye on this one. It could be in for a pretty decent crash in the upcoming weeks. Another interesting one has been the Ishtar. We saw that they got nerfed in the previous patch, and they have been relatively weak. But it looks like some amount of pressure is coming back. We're still seeing very anemic volumes. There's not a bunch to say about this at the moment. I don't think the trend is really anything to bank on at the moment. They could climb up to 170 million, but they could also fall to 150 million. Things are pretty weak here. I don't know where metas are specifically going. I haven't heard a bunch of fights, but I also have not had my ear to the ground very well lately. Another darling has been the Tengu, which we saw bottom out in the Skyla patch, and has recently been climbing out of that pit. So I don't know if this is a lowered production is now allowing the price to climb a little bit. I don't know if it's because the price of the materials have been spiking because of the Tech 3 destroyers. But the prices are up reasonably. If you bought in this trough, like I told you to, now would be a great time to count your money, because I have a hard time believing it'll go much higher. But again, this is another one that's at a spot that could technically go both ways. So it's trending down at the moment. We'll see what happens after the weekend. Another interesting one that I keep bringing up, and I think this one might actually be getting speculated on at the moment, is the Echelon has been on a rather linear climb up, and right now the prices are quite high. It's chopped off exactly how high they are, but prices keep trending up. This would be a great chance to sell if you can sell, but without being able to also see the spread, this price action could be way higher than the actual price. So just be wary. Another one that I didn't expect is the Procurer. Spiked up pretty hotly right ahead of the patch. This is probably because a lot are heading out to Null for the new mining. But I would have expected this to happen. I would have expected a price bump like this to happen long before, where we would see it when Fozzie announced the new mining yields. So I think it's a little bit weird. I think it's overvalued at the moment. If you can build Procurers, though, now might be a great chance to go make a few, get them out there. But I would make sure to get in and out by the end of the weekend, because this price is falling very fast. Moving on, the Ferox was tracking up last time we talked. And is now trending way down. Now, this could be weakness in the Tritanium markets and the Mexilon markets, reflecting in the price. Or it could be that there's a bunch of speculation that totally oversaturated the market. So, the prices are falling. I don't know who uses Feroxes for their metas, so prices are going down. I don't know when they're going to bottom out specifically. The current price seems relatively floor-ish, but it's hard to tell with a ship like this. Moving on to the Arbitrator, we saw it climbing rather high in the last couple of weeks, and the bubble has popped. Again, I'm pretty sure this has to do with the lowered value of the low ends. I don't know who uses arbitrators specifically. The volumes are still reasonably good, so we might see it come out of this trough this weekend. But that's a pretty long bet. I have a hard time believing it'll climb much. Moving on, I wanted to point out that it looks like the Caldari Navy is in cash-out mode. That Caldari Faction Warfare is in cash-out mode. We're seeing Caldari Navy large shield extenders tracking way down, so if you needed one, go buy it now. Also, data core quantum physics are tracking down, which should get reflected in a lot of the shield modules. So if you want to do sort of a two-tier speculation, now is an excellent time to be buying up quantum physics, waiting for the price to come back over 140. And also, this should reflect in the Tech 2 markets somewhat, but the price of data cores is not a big contributor to the price of the final goods. So it'll be a very slight ripple. Also, we're seeing the Caldari AZ-1 Nexus chip, which is used to cash out the ships, to get ships and ship blueprints from the loyalty point store. Those are tracking way up now. The prices have since popped, so we might be seeing the end of the cash out period, but this is a great time to go be looking at Caldari Navy faction goods, because the prices are going to be as low as they're going to get, and they should recover in the upcoming weeks. So this is a great place to speculate. Another interesting one, I think this is a insanely unstable price, is the 425mm Railgun 2. Have been tracking up to 400k, I think that is. This is a very steep climb. I expect this to come right back down to the 300k mark. I think that's the 3 million mark. I expect these to come back down hard and fast, but once they come down, they should bounce. So keep an eye on this. As the prices come down, it might be a decent time to buy in for when the market overcorrects, but it could go either way, so be careful. Another interesting one is the medium hyperspatial velocity optimizer. Now, with Mosaic, the warp speed rigs were adjusted the fitting requirements were adjusted, and this was expected to see more of the large ones consumed, at least according to reading between the lines of what Fozzie was saying. But we're seeing reasonably high volumes in the medium bracket, and this might have to do with the battle cruisers also had their warp speeds increased, so we might be seeing a double whammy of the warp speed, the base warp speed increased, and the usability of the medium hyperspatial rigs increased. So why don't we get battle cruisers that are technically more nimble than their cruiser brethren? So keep an eye out for this meta. I don't think there's a whole lot of action left to get into this one, but the prices are relatively low at the moment. This would be a great chance to buy in if you're a betting type. And then the weird one for the week is where I want to end this section of the show, is Vespa 2s are going way down in price. And I don't know if this is a sell-off. I don't know if this is the base materials. This is a much lower price than I think is stable. They're about 100k undervalued in my opinion. So this would be a great chance to buy in, but I don't know why the prices fell as hard and fast as they did with the patch. So this could be staying right at 600k. Last part of this show, we go through the predictions of the last show, and I only have a couple this week. The Noctis, I had said, was tracking up in price. And I sort of expected it to stay stable at that 80 mil level, but thanks to the falling price of Trit, we're seeing the prices continue to fall. Now, we could see an overcorrection down. So if you see this go below 70 million, I would go buy them up and wait for it to come back up to 75. But we'll see what happens. We could settle in at 75 as the stable price. And that has been the Eve Prosper Show. I'm your host, Lockefox, and if you want to tune into the show, all you have to remember is Eve Prosper. That'll get you to our Twitch, which we broadcast every Friday at 0200. That's Thursday night US. The show is up on YouTube the next day. It'll also be up on a podcast, so follow the blog at eveprosper.com and talk with us on the Tweet Fleet Slack at the Prosper channel. Information to join the channel will be down in the links below. If you like what we do here, please consider supporting us on Patreon. We've set up a tip jar there, and your support means a lot. This show is not free to produce, and we really, really appreciate your support. Now, no content is gated, but if you help support the show, we will produce extra content. I have some lesson plans in the works, and should be getting those out over the month of May, depending on how work goes. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will be back next week to talk about the market and the news of EVE Online.